What are healthy boundaries and why are they so important? In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about what are healthy boundaries with people in the physical world and what are healthy boundaries with spirits, your ancestors, with your spirit guides in the spiritual world. So make sure you stick around. Boundaries are like an invisible line where no one can cross without your consent. They define the limits of what is acceptable behavior and personal space. Why boundaries are important is because they're important to build strong, healthy relationships with yourself and with others. It's like this. Imagine you are a house. The house, the walls, the roof represent your physical body. Inside the house is your emotions, your thoughts, and your spirit. Outside the house is a fence. That fence is usually your first boundary, your energetic boundary, and no one can come into that space without your consent. And then no one can come into your house without your consent. No one can touch your house without your consent. And basically what boundaries do is it creates safety so you can fully be in your authentic self and express. I will share my perspective on boundaries and how to set healthy boundaries, both in the physical world and in the spiritual world, and also how to cultivate the courage, the bravery to be able to step into boundary settings. My belief is that the boundaries you have in your physical world with people in your physical life also mirror reflect the boundaries you have in the unseen world and the spiritual world. So we're going to have a conversation about boundaries in the physical world and boundaries in the spiritual world. And so we're going to go on a journey of boundaries from my perspective. What are the different types of boundaries? We're going to use the framework of the four bodies. We have physical boundaries, mental boundaries, emotional boundaries, and spiritual boundaries. Physical boundaries being not being touched on your physical body without consent. Could be as simple as asking first for a hug before someone offering you a hug. Our physical boundaries are really important, especially for our young children, is to educate them about their autonomy and their sovereignty with physical boundaries, and knowing that they have the right to say no if they don't want to be touched. Quite often in today is when like uncles, aunties are meeting their nieces or meeting their grandchildren, or just the young kids that are in your family, is smothering them with hugs when they don't know you. And so for me, is what I do is I always give them the space first, and I ask, do you want, can I have a hug? And if they say no, I accept that. But I don't willingly force a hug on a child, because what I believe is that it teaches them that an adult has right of say. So I will always ask a child, can I have a hug? My niece or my nephew, one day they might want to hug me, one day they might not, but I'm always asking them so I can teach them subconsciously that it's okay for them to say no. We have mental boundaries, which is most related to our intellectual property, is our ideas and protecting our ideas so no one can steal them. Because all the work that one may have done to create this idea, someone can describe it or run with it. We've seen this with Facebook. It was someone else's idea, but then it was planted to someone else's seed of consciousness, and then they grew it. And so we start to get into this blurred line of what is intellectual property and not. And so this is mental boundary. Emotional boundary is not asking someone about a certain topic that is emotionally charged for them. And so that person will set a boundary around these topics are off limits. Could be topics about the father, topics about mother, topics about past relationships, topics about trauma. And so we set an emotional boundary with that, so no one is allowed to cross that. We also have spiritual boundaries. It's quite often in today's age, is what I notice is, and I'm going to use the word the ego around, oh, I've been up all night because my ancestors were talking to me, because my spirit was talking to me, so I'm really tired. This is a demonstration, in my perspective, of unhealthy boundaries with spirit. And so for me, I learned very earlier on how to establish a contract with spirits, and also how to demand, do not talk to me while I'm sleeping. And so this is also spiritual boundaries. Overall, we also have energetic boundaries, is setting an energetic boundary on how you operate. And this is to filter out what I would use the word as dense or depreciating energy. A word you may use is negative. Depreciating or dense energy that comes into your field. So then when it comes into your energetic boundary, it's automatically transmuted and alchemized. And so that person that may be resonating at a bit more dense, depreciating energy, your energy doesn't match theirs and comes down to a lower frequency, but their energy has no other choice but either match your energy that's a bit higher and or go away. And so these are the 5, did I say 5? And so these are the boundaries that we have: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic. Why do people struggle with setting boundaries? There are so many reasons why. One of the reasons I will speak to is because quite often it's rooted from our childhood, our lived experience, from being told by our caregivers, teachers, that our voice doesn't matter, through being silenced, by not being able to say no, because we have to accept whatever the adult says. Having our emotions and our thoughts dismissed, silenced. And so we build up this habit of not stating and not being able to share our boundaries. So we lose our inner power, and therefore we lose the bravery and the courage to stand up for yourself and set those boundaries. Another layer there, which is also rooted from our childhood experiences, not having the communication skills, the communication intelligence to first articulate with yourself, what is my yes, what is my no, what is safe for me, what is not safe for me. And so first, to communicate your boundaries, you have to communicate your boundaries with yourself before you can communicate your boundaries with others. And so many people struggle to set boundaries because of the fear of conflict, which is rooted from our childhood experiences. If we set a boundary with an adult, it could result in punishment, either physical or taking something away. Another reason is a desire to please others, because once again, from our childhood experience of either having a parent that wasn't fully present, and so we were the parent for them, having a sibling that needed a bit more attention, and so it was always about that sibling, and so we had to cover up and make up for the surrounding space to support that child, and also have your own needs, because it's not about you, it's about the sibling. And then also a lack of awareness of needs, which is a lack of presence. It's fear of being in the body, it's fear of getting to know the self, because that's scary, which is also stemmed from our childhood of disassociation of whatever has happened during your childhood experiences. It's not safe to be in the body, it's not safe to be here in the now, and so therefore we create disassociation. And so the real invitation here is communication, is being able to communicate with yourself, with all the parts of yourself, to understand what is safe, what is not safe, what is my yes, what is my no, what is my absolute No, what is my absolute yes? How do you identify your own personal boundaries? It comes down to safety. What feels safe for you and what doesn't? Am I triggered by if this happens or not? Trigger could be, do I freeze? Do I get angry? Do I get sad? Do I run away? These are all triggers of not feeling safe. And so the most important part here is just asking yourself, does this feel safe for me or not? Does being hugged by this person feel safe for me? No. How do I communicate that safely? Now, one of the most important parts here is if you don't believe your own words and say with authority, the other person will not either. So you have to share your boundaries with such clarity and such authority that they have no other choice. And if they don't accept that, then how can you create other implications by bringing in a third party, a trusted friend and or a work colleague to be a witness to this boundary setting? Very common within the workplace of touchy-feely hands, and when it's played off, I'm like, oh, light, I'm just playing. I was like, no, that is crossing a boundary. Very common within the male-female dynamics within a workplace is a male is being touchy-feely, but too much, especially if he's a superior, and if I say that this is uncomfortable for me, will that person fire me, basically? That is what you have to go through for yourself, is my safety more important than money and my security? And maybe by you standing up for yourself encourages everybody else in the workplace to stand up for themselves as well. And so how you identify personal boundaries, just asking yourself, does this feel safe for me or does this not? Is this a yes for me or is this a no? What are some practical tips to setting boundaries? First is to understand what the boundary is. So the more you practice that boundary, the easier it will be to communicate it. So first, sit with yourself, ask yourself what is safe for me, what is not, what is my yes, what is my no. Write down, this is my boundary. This is my best physical boundary. And you can be specific from this person. I do not want to be hugged by this person. Yes, there's a balance between being kind, but then there's a fine line of people pleasing, of not protecting yourself, of not honoring your needs and your boundaries, and basically crossing your own boundaries, because you can cross your own boundaries too. And so it is practice. First, understand what your boundaries are, then write them out, then start to verbalize them, articulate them, practice it like a script. And then when it's time to communicate it to the other person, you've practiced it and you communicate it. It is practice. There is an element here of bravery and courage and vulnerability and a risk factor of if you are afraid of the conflict or the implications of what may come after that, that is the reason why you're not setting your boundaries. There's a bit of questioning here for yourself, is what is more important? Is your career, your job and money, or the safety of yourself? Because if you cross your boundary here, it's never going to be respected again. And then you're going to cross your boundaries in other areas of your life. The best thing to do is to honor your boundaries, stay firm on your boundaries, and they will be respected. And the universe will respect those boundaries as well. Now, how do we set boundaries with spirits? If we've cultivated boundaries safely and assertively and respectively and authoritatively in our physical world with our relationships and our environment, then that would mirror reflect into the spiritual world. I've been asked a few times by people is, how do I stop spirit talking to me? I've been up all night communicating with ancestors and spirits, and I simply just offer them this one question is, how are your boundaries in this physical world? Can you say no? And quite often they're like, wait, what? And then I say, because your boundaries in this physical world are a mirror reflection of your boundaries in the spiritual world. Because my perspective is the physical world is a mirror reflection of the spiritual world. there's also another layer there of the ego mind, the ego part of the self, loves to identify as I'm communicating with spirit. Wow, I've been up all night, I'm so tired because the ancestors have been talking to me. But then that person is complaining about their energy being tired, and they're looking drained. I need to take a break. Is it because their boundaries aren't assertive and clear and healthy? And so spirit ancestors are just talking to them whenever they want. And so how do we set boundaries with spirit? Is simply say, no, I will not tolerate this. This is what is acceptable, this is what is not. And that is, you're only able to assert that as if you're able to assert that in your physical world. And so for me is, I have a contract with spirit. My contract is, unless you are wanting to be moved on from this realm, or you're here to do healing work, then do not talk to me. Do not talk to me. And so spirit only comes to me when they want to move on, or we're going to do some healing work together. That is my contract. Because for me, I want to have a good night's sleep. For me, I don't want to get confused on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. That is my contract with spirit. And so once again, the two layers there of, if you are having trouble with sleeping at night because spirit ancestors, your guides are talking to you, or if you do have the ability of clairvoyance and you are seeing with your eyes open and or hearing, it is your divine right to demand. This is a concept actually I learned within Te Ao Māori, is we have prayer, and which is asking for guidance, and then you can demand, and that is our divine right. So prayer for us is karakia, and then demanding is taku. And the difference is, I am asking for guidance, I am demanding. And the difference is I am demanding. And so it could be as like, I ask for guidance on for the safety of this, yada yada, for the safety of my journey, for this. And for demanding is, I demand safety, I want to create a container here. And it's very clear and assertive. And so it is your divine right to establish what is acceptable for you with spirit, with your ancestors. And also understand that if the ego, the spiritual ego is like, but this is so cool, I'm talking to spirit, it's great until it becomes energetically draining. So this is how we can set healthy boundaries with spirit. So the tips and techniques on how we create healthy boundaries. First is to sit with yourself, to take time with yourself, to be present with yourself. That is the first step. And how you do that is through journaling, through meditation, through just silence. You don't even have to be in meditation. You just have to take the time to have a dialogue with yourself. If you're setting boundaries that you've never set before, is practice them. Write it out. Verbalize it, practice it with a friend, and then when it's time to practice it with that person, you've practiced it, you've taught the body it. Okay, it takes practice. This isn't like boom, because there are so many layers there. Now the one technique I'm going to give you that supports you is, quite often what is stopping us from setting our boundaries is fear, and we've lost our power. So I want to teach you a technique to help cultivate bravery, encouragement, and empowerment. So in breath, from what I've learned, there are three breaths here. We have our breath in the belly, which helps us to ground into the body, which is our alkaline breath, our breath of the mother, breathing into the earth. We have our breath up here, which is an acidic breath, breathing into our upper chest, which is quite often can stimulate and create anxiety. And it's usually the breath we are doing when we're in stress, when we don't feel safe. And the one part of the breath that I feel like is quite often missed is the breath in the solar plexus. And so the breath technique that we're going to do is we're going to breathe into the solar plexus. And you're going to imagine this part, if you can see this part, the solar plexus which just sits below the sternum bone. You're going to breathe into that part. And you're going to tap. This is our power, our empowerment point. And so we're going to activate empowerment through breathing into this point, and we're going to tap it. And we're going to say the words, I am brave, I am courageous, I am powerful. I am brave, I am courageous, I am powerful. I am brave, I am courageous, I am powerful. I am brave, I am courageous, I am powerful. And you're just going to tap into that part. So that's going to stimulate bravery, courage. So that's going to stimulate bravery, courage, and empowerment. And so each time you are setting your boundaries, you start to practice with this breath. And then when it comes time to actually setting those boundaries, you're ready. And if in those moments you start to feel like you lose your power, which quite often is we start to breathe into our chest, remember to bring your breath back down to your solar plexus and your belly to ground you into your body and to ground you into the empowerment that you are. So setting boundaries is probably one of the most important things you can do for yourself. And then also learning how to communicate with yourself. And setting boundaries is just creating a life of safety, a life of clarity and communication. It is your divine right to feel safe with the boundaries you set, and to have those boundaries respected. It does take a bit of work to cultivate the bravery and the courage to understand what your boundaries are. But you either have two choices, is live in a life of unsafety and fear because your boundaries are constantly being crossed, or live in a life of empowerment, of bravery and courage. And so to close up this video, I will share karakia. Karakia for strength, a Māori prayer for strength. So inviting you to bring your eyes to a close. Mā te rā e kawe mai, te ngoi i a rā, mā te tara mai whakaaro, i a koe a wainga pō, mā te ua e horoi o mā harahara, mā te haua e pupupi te pā kahu, ki rote e tō tētai, i rote e ōihi koe tangi i te ao, ke whakaaro koe ki te humari, o ake tonu atu, tihei mauri ora. May the sun bring you energy by day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the wind blow new strength into your being. May you walk on this earth in peace in all the days of your life and know its beauty forever and ever. It is life. It's been a pleasure journeying with you all again. Tihei mauri ora.